topic is long awaited. We're going to talk about sugar. So, different types of sugar. Is it all good? Is it all bad? Are there differences? The answers are sort of complicated, which is why I waited to do this video. So, the way that most dietitians and nutritionists will break things down is according to some terminology that you might be familiar with. It's called complex carbs and simple carbs. So in order for them to kind of categorize foods into these groups, they use something called the glycemic index. The glycemic index is a scale that basically rates all types of carbohydrates and sugars into how fast they are broken down into glucose. Now remember, glucose is that sugar that is measured in your blood. So when you're testing your blood sugar, you're measuring for glucose. So this scale basically lines all these foods up, and the higher the number, the closer it is to glucose. So table sugar, for example, has a glycemic index in like the mid to upper 60s. Glucose itself is around 100. So every type of sugar and carbohydrate is a strand of molecules. Glucose itself is just one sugar molecule. Sucrose, which is table sugar, is 2 molecules of sugar. So that's really easily broken down in the blood. There's only one chop that they have to do to get it broken into those one sugar molecule pieces. So that's how they're looking at things, is basically how fast the body will break it down to glucose, because that's going to kick your sugars up. The longer the chain of sugars, the longer it takes for the body to break it down. So when they're looking at simple carbs and complex carbs, that's kind of what they're talking about. Now, how are you guys going to find out this information? There are lots of charts that you can use to kind of look at what those glycemic indexes are estimated to be. There, you can do all sorts of research on the internet. But what I want to talk about a little further is the kind of the different types of sugars initially. So a lot of health blogs and magazines will talk about honey and maple syrup kind of being the healthier option to sugar. So I kind of want to dive a little deeper into that. Okay, so what we have here is honey, maple syrup, and sugar. So what we need to do initially is make these all equivalent. So the serving sizes are a little bit different depending on which container you're looking at. So I basically already did the math to account for that and converted everything to 1 tablespoon. So for 1 tablespoon of sugar, it's going to be 12 grams of sugar, and in like the mid to upper 60s on the glycemic index. For the maple syrup, 1 tablespoon is going to be about 13.5 grams of carbohydrates, and in the mid to upper 50s. For the honey, 1 tablespoon is going to be 17 grams of sugar, and again, going to be in that same realm as the maple syrup, mid to upper 50s. So when you are actually comparing them, the glycemic index of the honey and the maple syrup is not that far off from the sugar, and the amount of sugar per gram is actually a little bit higher when you're comparing serving per serving. So it's pretty much a wash. So what does that mean? Well, sugar is sugar. So if you're talking about honey, maple syrup, or table sugar, they're all pretty much the same. They are going to be broken down quickly in the body, and they're going to shoot those sugars up, right? So when you're trying to kind of alter your diet, that's probably one of the things that you need to consider to limit the amount of sugars or sweeteners that you are using. So if you're trying to find a sugar substitute, you have to be careful with those as well. So a lot of sugar substitutes have hidden sugars in them that will kick your glucose up as well. So if you're kind of testing them out, you need to be testing your sugars as well to see how it impacts your blood sugar. So the next thing that I want to discuss is kind of that processing topic. So we talk about processed foods being bad. Is that true? Well, yes, the reason why processed foods are bad is because they are already broken down. So all of these sugars and carbohydrates that start out, when you process a food, it breaks those chains into smaller chains or molecules, okay? So the more processed, the more broken down, the more likely it's going to increase your sugars. So the perfect example is oatmeal. There are many different types of oatmeal. So you have steel cut oats, you have old fashioned oats, you have quick oats, and then you have the little packets with all the flavorings in them. So you guys probably already know those little packets are filled with sugar. When they add those flavorings in, they're adding sugar. But what you might not realize is that process between steel cut, old fashioned, and quick oats is a processing type situation. So steel cut oats are pretty much whole. Very little, if any, processing. The old-fashioned oats are somewhat processed, so they take less time to cook because they've already been partially broken down. If it takes less time to cook, that means it's going to take less time to digest, okay? So that's just something to think about whenever you guys are doing your grocery shopping. So when you're going up and down those aisles, a lot of those foods are going to be processed. You might have to do a little research to see kind of how much processing is involved and what you're incorporating into your diet. Make sense? Okay, well, that's probably it for today. I know that this video strand was probably a little bit longer, but it's really important. These concepts are vital to kind of getting your management in check if you have diabetes, but they're also vital if you don't. So we should all know these types of things about nutrition because that's how we're going to prevent getting this diagnosis later, right? So that's part of the goal with Diabetes Battle Buddy is to not only help people manage their condition, but to also prevent others from getting that condition later. So these topics are applicable to everyone. If you have questions, you know how to get a hold of me. You can send me a message or put a comment below. I hope you guys are having a great weekend and I will catch up with you later, all right? Take care.
We wish you the best as you start this journey. For more resources, questions, or support, check out our website at www.diabetesbattlebuddy.com.